Good evening, everyone. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is the Kudlow Report.
The product is good. The health insurance that's being provided is good. It's high quality and it's affordable. So here's the bottom line. The product, the health insurance, is good. The prices are good. It is a good deal. That's what the Affordable Care Act is all about. That's its promise. And I intend to deliver on that promise.
Well, repetition doesn't always make it so. That, of course, President Obama trying to convince us that Obamacare is actually a good product. Maybe he doesn't believe it either. Today, the White House declined to answer whether he has lived up to his 2010 promise to sign up. Perhaps he, like millions of Americans, has discovered it's a bad product. And then there's the other side. Republicans need to hammer that home. It's a bad product, period. The House GOP has 4 hearings scheduled this week. But GOP must also offer, I think, a compassionate, transparent, and affordable alternative. So the stakes are very high on both sides. Let's talk to our friend, former special counsel to President Clinton, Lanny Davis. He is the author of the new book, Crisis Tales, 5 Rules for Coping with Crises in Politics. We got to give him on. We got to give him on to the Republican side. Anyway, maybe the Obama team should read it for some pointers. Also with us, health policy expert Hadley Heath from the Independent Women's Forum. You know, Lanny, with all due respect, I don't think it's a good product. And I'll just start by saying it's going to cost a whole lot more, and the product line is going to be less, and the networks are going to shrink. And I think people in the country are generally pissed off. And also, he lied, and that hurt him too.
Well, if you're right, I'll agree with you. I'm just not sure you're right. I certainly applaud you for saying the Republicans need an alternative, because we are the only Western democracy in the world that has no national health insurance, guaranteed access to health care. Why is it that it's good enough for the Canadians, for the Swedes, for the Swiss, for the French, and for the English, but not for the Americans?
No, the Canadians
so we
come
Democrats,
to Detroit.
At least,
the Canadians come over the border. I mean, I love the Canadians, okay? They got a good monetary policy. They got lower corporate tax rates than we have. Their economy is growing better. But when it comes to health care, they come across the border.
Well, the wealthy and those that can afford to come across the border do, but those that can't get access to health care in America are stuck in emergency rooms with high temperatures waiting to have their children taken care of. So we Democrats at least came up with a proposal, but I do concede this is a mess. We may have tried too much, too fast, and on a partisan basis. I've said already that we should hit the reset button and open ourselves up to some new ideas. And Larry Kudlow always has new ideas, even if they're conservative.
Well, okay, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your honesty. Hadley, let's talk about this because, all right, Republicans are licking their chops about the elections coming up in 2014, roughly a year from now. We're going to talk more about that later in the show. What I want to ask you is, what can you do for a simple, transparent, compassionate response to the breakdown of Obamacare? I have an answer, but I want you to go first.
Well, with any health reform proposal, we have to look first at the root cause of the problems in our healthcare system. I think conservatives and liberals agree that the healthcare system before Obamacare was a mess. But Democrats wrongly associated those failures with a market failure. It wasn't a failure of markets. We hardly had a market at all. We didn't have a lot of competitive pressures to hold down prices or give consumers options. So pointing out the right source of the problem is a first step towards the right solution. So it just doesn't make sense the way that we pay for health care. I believe we have some of the highest quality health care in the world. That's why people do come here to receive health care. But our payment system is what needs addressing. The third-party payment system that's very complex. Yeah. The fact that I use a health insurance company to pay for my well checks for things that I get on a regular basis, that makes no sense. So pointing to those problems and coming up with solutions for those problems instead of rearranging everything.
All right, I agree with the market approach, absolutely. But I want to come back to my friend Lanny Davis, because you are one clever, wise counsel chap. You know, Lanny, if I were running for office, and I am not, but if I were running in 2014 as a Republican, you know what I'd want to emphasize? That the GOP will help those who are sick with pre-existing conditions, and they will do so in a transparent way, even if it means having the government just forking over $15 or $20 billion to help them out with risk pools and maybe state cooperation. In other words, I felt that President Obama's best-selling card, yeah, universal access was one. But I thought his best-selling card, and I think it's been the Democratic selling card from day one, is they will help the sick, and the Republicans won't. And I think the GOP's got to turn that around.
Well, you are absolutely right, and I really do agree with your guest regarding market conditions. I've always felt that going to a physician and taking tests that somebody else is paying for and you don't really care what's on the bill because it's a third-party payer, rather than requiring people to have deductibles where they at least have to know what they're getting and decide whether they want to pay, that's the market operating, is a fundamental flaw with or without Obamacare. But I do want to point out for you conservatives who are watching that President Obama rejected a public option on these marketplace exchanges. They're all private insurance companies competing for customers among the uninsured. But that was a market-based approach.
It was, but it's not. I mean, it had a yes and no. I mean, the four plans really are almost one size fits all. The financing may be a little different, but it's not a real choice because we see now the networks are shrinking. You're not going to get your insurance. You're not going to get your doctor. You're going to have to pay higher premiums. I mean, this is what President Obama got in trouble with because all those promises didn't pan out. But Hadley, I want to go back to this other point. In sheer raw political terms, doesn't the Republican Party have to convince the country, particularly independents and let's say moderate Democrats, that they, the GOP, do worry about sick people and will help those with pre-existing conditions? I think that's been a flaw in Republican policy and rhetoric for a long time. Yeah, message.
Exactly.
Thank you. Message.
Exactly, and when you boil down to any of these safety net programs, they have support from Americans across all political aisles.
It's a
and that's why
net.
so many people supported Obamacare, because they believed Obamacare was a safety net program, when in fact it was a redistribution program, large-scale redistribution through the health system. So
you
if
get
we
the
focus
Nobel
on
Prize.
the safety net
you get
issue,
the Nobel Prize for economics
or do it at the state level, Larry. We've already got some high-risk pools at the state level. If they need more funding, more support, or some kind of restructuring reform at the state level, that's something that conservatives have talked about for a while and don't get enough credit for.
I mean, Lanny Davis, just going to end this up. I wish we had more time. I worked for a guy, Ronald Reagan. All right, he was willing to cut spending, but he believed in the safety net. And my mentor, the late Jack Kemp, always believed in the safety net and helping those who truly couldn't help themselves. I think the Republican Party have to take that Democratic message out because this thing is going to wind up bankrupt. Their plan is going to bankrupt the system and nobody's going to win. GOP's got to say, here's how we're going to do it. Even if it means, heaven forbid, I'm going to say this on the air, even if it means more spending to help the sick, I would do it, as long as it's transparent and we let the taxpayers see what they're getting for their money, or to help the risk pool formation that Hadley is talking about. I'll give you the last word, Lanny.
The last word is I hope you don't run for president, because that's a tough message for Democrats to beat. And the reason that Bill Clinton was so successful is he's a progressive Democrat on social and cultural issues, but he also believed that the free market and business could be helpful to those progressive goals. You have it the slightly other way around, but there is a lot of commonality, and I hope you don't run for president, Larry.
I'm telling you, I say this to everybody. It's just one of my pet peeves. Universal access, I don't really believe that's ever going to happen, nor do I believe it should happen. But we could make progress on that. On the other hand, the sick people, the elderly and the sick, the young are not going to finance them. We are learning that now. That's the structural flaw in this whole bloody system. But we must be compassionate. We must be compassionate about this. Insurance companies notwithstanding. I'm a Jack Kemp compassionate conservative. Yes, I am.
Exactly. That was compassionate conservative.
I am. I'm a Lanny Davis follower. All right? You're terrific. Lanny's great.
Thank
New book, Crisis Tales, now available. And also Hadley Heath, who's got the market story completely right and understands this whole business about pre-existing conditions. Now, was the story about Amazon's